and then share our screen. Share screen. Where is my that bin? Okay, then let's continue our yesterday's discussion.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah, please.
Wouldn't having an override in a superclass be irrelevant? Because I was trying to wrap my mind around that, because clearly in a subclass you have an override to override the method that's in the superclass. But if you have an override in the superclass, what are you trying to override?
No, in superclass, suppose that superclass doesn't have any other superclass.
Right.
Okay, that's the ancestor, is it?
Okay.
It doesn't have any other ancestor. That's a root of the superclass. So
Right.
suppose like in object class, is it? Then there is no method you can do override. Your override is always override some other class defined in a superclass.
Right. But you could override toString because it's a default class of Java, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's because, no. Okay, be careful here. You said
not class, default method, sorry.
No. toString is not a default method. Be careful.
Oh.
Okay, this concept. Why you always say, oh, in a class, is it? I don't remember. We had a lot of examples. So you just defined our time class. Is it time class? Then within our time class, we do that override. The override. Then we have that public string to string. I think that's maybe your question. Is it? And something. Is it? You said okay in this class. I didn't do extends. Is it some superclass? That's maybe your question. Is it? That's your question? You say I didn't do that. Why it override? Is it? Where this come from? That's because even though you didn't do extends, but by default, it overrides who? It overrides this class, object. Okay, object class in Java. So in Java, object class is the root of all other class. So even though you didn't explicitly write extend, basically it means extends object. So it's equivalent to you write extends objects. That makes sense, object. That makes sense now? That's why you see that toString, is it?
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, that makes sense, okay. But override, we also learned, is it? So yesterday we learned what? Interface. Interface, is it? And the interface when a class implements an interface. Okay, if the class wants to implement the abstract class or abstract method, it also need to do what? It does what? Override. Is it? It also does that override. Is it? That's what we showed yesterday. Is it? So interface can also but interface also allows you whoever the class implements it do override its abstract method, okay? But interface has nothing to do with the inheritance, okay? So be careful here.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, please.
So I was working on the lab and the homework last night, and I was trying to understand what exactly makes a method abstract.
What exactly makes an abstract method abstract?
Right.
Okay, so first, we all know abstract methods definition, is it? Abstract method is what? So what's the difference between an abstract method and the other instance method that we learned? Is abstract method you didn't implement it, is it? So abstract method, so only has what? Has method signature. Okay, no implementation. No
Meaning
implementation.
it's not part of a class?
No, it is part of the class. Okay, it is definitely part of the class. Okay, so how about let's.
I guess I'm just struggling with the idea of implementation. I watched the videos back a couple times, and I was just trying to understand. I mean, I understand the extends, but the implementation I'm still kind of conceptually trying to figure out, I guess.
Okay, let's get back to that example probably. You remember the second example? Yeah, on our course website, I also provided that example.
Yeah.
Chapter 13, example 2, employee, you remember?
Right.
In that class, or in that example, we have employee.java, okay. So let's take a look. I need to get rid of this. You remember that class, the employee class? Is it? Employee class is an abstract class we defined. Is it? So all its instance variable definition, no difference from you have learned so far. Is it? Constructor, nothing new, is it here? And the stat first, get lastly, nothing new, is it? The set first, set last, get last, set secure, get security, is it? Nothing new? The two string, is it? So the last method, take a close look. This earnings method. What's the difference between earnings and the get secure, set security? Get secure, set secure, all of this method, they have what? They have brackets.
Oh.
And then all of the statements within it. Is it? So they have method body.
Okay.
This is implementation. Is it not just the method header?
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So when you're doing a regular method with implementation, it has a function, or you include the implementation of it, whereas when you do an abstract, you're just doing the signature.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it makes some sense. Yeah.
For sure. And then
so,
where is the implementation of earnings defined?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that's why here you need to add abstract. Okay.
Right. And you can't put an abstract method unless the class is abstract as well, right?
What I didn't quite get your question.
Well, up at the top it said public, abstract, private, class, or whatever it was. So you can't put the method as abstract unless the class is abstract, correct?
If your class has a single abstract method, then the class must be defined
Okay.
as the abstract class. So that's
Got it.
necessary condition. This makes sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Then you cannot remove this abstract keyword here. Okay, that
Right.
won't work because you have one abstract method in this employee class. That's the only difference between this employee class and the previous one that we learned. Is it?
Okay.
Okay, then your next question is,
Where it was defined at, right?
yeah, where did you define it? Then let's see, the hourly employee. Is it? The hourly employee is what? It extends employee. Is it? So it's a subclass of employee class. Okay,
Okay.
but this class doesn't have abstract. So it's not abstract. Abstract. So this means it is concrete class.
So all the ones we've created up until now have been concrete classes.
Exactly, very good. Yeah, exactly. Okay, it's a concrete class. Okay, what to make, but it inherits employee class, is it? It inherits employee. Employee class has a method that's not implemented, but your hourly employee is a concrete, so it got to implement that earnings. That's how it goes. Did you see? You override this earnings method. This time, this earnings is not just a semicolon stop here. Then you don't have that semicolon. You have replaced the semicolon with what? With this curly brackets and all of those calculations. Okay, then this method is not an abstract method. It is an instance method, an implemented method. Is it? So now this hourly employee class, this class doesn't have any single abstract method. Is it? So this class, it is a concrete class. That makes sense now?
Yeah. And so I guess the benefit of this is so that a superclass can use a method that's inside a subclass.
We shouldn't see a superclass use a method in a subclass.
Well, didn't we just come from employee, which is the superclass, to hourly employee?
Yeah, but we didn't. This method, the inheritance, but that's a very, very good question. Okay, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Very good, deep
I'm
thinking.
sorry if everybody else knows this, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
Okay, so whenever you mention the word inheritance,
Right.
that means the subclass inherit some features from superclass. Is it? So who initially owns that? That's a superclass. Is it? And subclass then inherit it. So here the abstract superclass. Very good question, okay. So abstract superclass versus, is it concrete superclass? Is it? So here the concept for our employee superclass is, the concept is, it is a superclass, but it provides that method earnings. It said, okay, I'm just provide a skeleton of the method, but I'm not going to provide any implementation. Okay, and it leaves the space how to implement it to any of the subclass. So hourly employee can do the earnings for hourly employee, salaried can pay based on salaried, commission can based on commission employee. So I don't implement, I just say, okay, we should have this for the superclass. Okay, so that's about abstract superclass. Is it for concrete superclass? Concrete superclass itself, all of the method it owns, it implement also. So it implement all of the method also. It doesn't, it leaves, but it still give the subclass space to override any of its methods. Okay, unless some method, if it's defined as final, okay, that's a later story we will see. Okay, then it give you the freedom for the subclass to implement it. Also, you can also override. Okay, the major difference for abstract is I even don't implement. Okay, I just provide the skeleton there. As how do you want to fill the skeleton? You have freedom. That makes sense now?
So it just exists in the superclass to then be defined in the subclass.
Yeah, for abstract. Okay, for abstract method. That makes sense?
Yeah, and I guess I'm getting kind of far into it, but then, you know, what's the point of having it exist in the superclass if you're going to implement it in the subclass and you could just call it in the subclass anyway? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay. That's
like why would I go and, you know, do an abstract class to begin with if I could just create it in the subclass and it would work the same way?
Oh, no. That's the other story for the OOP. Is it? OOP, object-oriented programming. Is it the other aspect? So it's encapsulation, nothing to do here. Inheritance, is it? The other very important feature is polymorphism. Polymorphism, is it? So I just provide the skeleton there. I don't implement. Then for different subclass for hourly, that's one category of employee. Is it? Commission-based employee, that's another category. Salary employee, another category. Is it? They share certain common features from their parents. Is it? But regarding the earnings, this specific feature, they demonstrate their own traits, okay, their own special things on that. So maybe, you know, they all inherit maybe the shape, it's the same, is it? But for that shape, so it's just the parent class just said, okay, all of my child class, you need to have the feature regarding shape. Okay, but regarding the shape as to how do you color the shape, it will give that freedom to the subclass. So each different subclass can fill the shape with different color. Is it? So
Right.
that's called polymorphism. That's the purpose. That makes sense?
So it could work the same way as if I was like, I did an abstract class or method called area, but one subclass is a circle and the other is a rectangle. So it's
Yeah.
going to be implemented different, but still reference the same
Yeah, exactly.
abstract class.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you for
exactly.
explaining all that. That
Yeah,
definitely clears a
exactly.
lot up for me. Alex,
Yeah,
you said you had a question?
pardon me?
Yes, I do. I have a question. That's what he
Yeah.
said. So, what's the point of having an abstract method?
What's the point?
Like we have an override for like a subclass or whatever, public double earnings, and it has a body. What
Okay.
does abstract class do? Abstract method, sorry.
Okay, you see, does abstract allow you to create instance? we said the major difference between abstract class and concrete class is what?
Is that we cannot create objects
You
in
cannot
an
create.
instance variables.
Yeah, you cannot create instant. No, you can create a variable, but you cannot create that object. Is it? So regarding abstract class, you cannot create an object on heap. Okay, on heap memory. Is it? And then why do we need that? That's back to the story of polymorphism. Is it polymorphism? This is purely software design. Is it? Otherwise, if we don't design this employee as an abstract, of course, you can define it as a concrete class. Then in that class, it may not make sense, is it just employee? And we may not never need to have instance of employee. What we really have, just like shape, is it? If you just generally speaking about shape, how do you create a shape instance? No, is it? You got to have what? A specific shape, is it? You got to have a specific, but we still need the concept about shape and the shape area and the shape diameter. That makes sense. That's why we need abstract class. So we need to create a class called shape that's abstract. Is it? And then we have the concept about area, about parameter calculation. Is it? But
so abstract class is like a shape of the object, or like shape of what?
Then like a circle, rectangle. Is it? Those are like it's a subclass. It's a subclass. That makes sense.
Can I?
Yeah.
Explain it? Well, the way I was thinking about it, and she said, I guess it made sense, is so when you create the abstract method in the superclass, you're basically saying these subclasses are gonna need this method, but they have individuality, so each of them can't be defined because they're not the same in the superclass. So you're saying you need the method, but then so you call it as abstract. So then you define it with the same name inside the subclass. So it's already been established. The signature is in the superclass, but then it's implemented in the subclasses.
Very, very good explanation. I like
So
the
you
word
mean
individualization. Yeah, very good. Very, very, very good word for individualization. Yeah.
so having that public abstract method, we can refer to any other method in subclasses with the same name.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why we don't require a body of it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it's override, but it's a little bit polymorphism too, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Very good discussion. Okay, very, very good. Okay. Any other comments or question? So everything is clear, is it here? Okay, so let's get to the first quiz question. Is what Will just mentioned about his explanation about subclass, the need for the abstract class, abstract method in the superclass and the subclass and implement it. And he used a specific word. I just said that's a very good catchy word to explain the concept and what that word is. So you can just write it down in the quiz, okay? And just remember, send privately to me, okay? Not to everyone, so that I make sure everyone is listening. So send it to our chat as private chat to me, send it to me. So we can go ahead, start this.
The question again?
You remember Will just answered. He used a word. So how about let's do it again. So Will, can you try to explain it again about your idea? that explanation?
Yeah, I just basically said that you use the abstract class to create the signature in the superclass, and you would call that same method name again in the subclasses to individualize the method inside the certain subclasses, because
Yeah,
each of them are individualized, which I think is the word she's looking for.
yeah, yeah.
And so you can't give the implementation in this the superclass, because I think I explained it enough. Like I'm just going in circles here. So yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you know, just like a shape, you generally speaking about a shape, how do you come up with a very general formula to calculate its area? There is no such thing. Is it very general? But regarding circle, then we do have that specific formula. So that individualized formula to calculate area. Is it for square? We also have that individualized formula to calculate squares area. But the concept regarding area, it's for shape. It's for shape. So that's the concept. So in math, if you are discussing a line or a dot, a dot, a point or a line, it doesn't have calculator area. Is it? It doesn't have such thing. But for shape, then it does need to have this calculator area. So you do need to provide this kind of interface so that any of the subclass, like the shape, specific circle or area or square, then they know to implement the area. That makes sense? So I'm looking for that specific word. I believe that's a very good word, even though in the literature no one mentioned that, but I like that word, individualize. Okay, so you just send the answer as individualize to our chat, and remember, just to me. Okay, and we will this is our quiz. Okay, part of our daily quiz regarding our lecture. Any other question? So not everyone sending, so can you all just send, because totally we have 17, 18 participants. So far we only have 11 chats. So some of you haven't sent your answer regarding our quiz to the chat. So please send it. Just send it to me, okay? The answer we are looking for is a subclass override that method. What a subclass does is subclass does some individualized implementation of the general method defined in the superclass. So you need to write the word individualize as your answer. Okay, so that's regarding superclass and subclass, concrete, abstract class. Okay, so let's come back to interface. Okay, and the interface yesterday we discussed. Okay, interface is not a class. Okay, so what an interface provides is, so it provides a group of methods. Okay, it provides a group of, we always call method in OOP also as some interface, is it? Because it provides your client program, is it? Some interface to do something, is it? And because in programming word, we all also see this a lot, API. So this I is interface. Yeah. When you will graduate, when you look for a job, you will see a lot of this API. Okay, what does that mean? That I is interface. Okay, so what is interface? It's just a collection of methods together, is it? And then in our case, the interface, the major thing is it has what? Has the abstract method. Is it? The abstract method is not implemented in interface. It's not implemented, just leave it there. So what interface different from an abstract class is abstract class still allows instance variable, as it allows instance method, and it also allows to use it to create a subclass. But interface is not a class, so it doesn't support inheritance, okay? But it does collect a group of methods together, okay? So that when a class tries to implement it, it can implement that specific method. And yesterday we discussed for interface, it also support what? Support constant values, default method, and static method. This is not called class method, it's called the static method. Okay, and then we also discussed yesterday about some method, some class that's implemented. So first it's the invoice class. Is it invoice class? It implements that interface. And here, this invoice can implement this invoice class is not an abstract method. And so it does need what? It needed to implement that abstract method, get a payment amount from the payable interface. You do need to implement this method, okay? So this is regarding invoice class. Then we also have the employee class here. So this time, this employee class still defined as abstract class. And it implements what? It implements that payable. Is it? But if you screw the whole class, you didn't see any abstract method. And previously we discussed, as we said, abstract class must have at least one abstract method. So that abstract method is which method? Is that get payment amount method. Okay, it implements, as I didn't implement in this employee class. And then we come to salary employee. Salary employee, it's a concrete class. It's not abstract. It extends employee. So now it overrides that get payment amount method. Okay, payment amount. So that's how you can see from here, is it? So we have the payable interface. Is it? The major method in it is that get payment amount. Is this method? Is it? And then we have what? We have employee class. Is it implemented? And we also have invoice implemented, is it? And then we have what? Salary employee. Employee, is it? And so both of this are two classes. And they implement this interface, is it? And are there any relationship between these two classes? Nothing. Is it? So no relationship between these two classes. Is it? But you can see both can implement this payable interface. Okay, because within it both have something related with payment amount. Is it? So invoice is invoice payment amount, and the employee, the salary employee has its payment amount calculation. Is it? So this is called interface, okay, and then it just provide a way so that each different class can implement the interface also based on their own needs. So interface also reflects OOP's polymorphism. Okay, so that's a concept regarding interface. And let's get back a payable interface. And if you recall, we have this static method, is it? And then in this static method, it's kind of interesting, is it the get invoice. And it can take what? So static method, it takes, in this case, takes a reference. It can access some reference, okay? And then inside it, access its reference method. So that's allowed, okay? This is allowed. And for this default method, if you take a closer look, it called what? It also called abstract method. So this is also interesting, is it? So that's also allowed, okay? Temporarily, we don't need to worry this too much, okay? Later on, when we learn collection, we will see a lot. And then let's go back to take a look the driver part, okay? The client program. Then here, if we take a look, the first statement. So here we have payable objects. What's the type? The type is interface. And previously the interface will not support object. But here you see, you do use interface as type. This is allowed. Is it? We want to have an array. Is it? So here then you do new payable. And why this is okay? Because this new is about what? Is about array. Okay, can we do this? Payable P equals new payable. Can we do that? Can I do new payable? Can we do new payable parentheses?
Yes.
Yes. The answer is yes.
Payable is an abstract method, right?
Payable is what? Payable is an interface. Can you use interface?
No, sorry. No. I thought it's abstract.
Yeah, no. Okay, the answer is definitely no. Okay, you can never do that. And here you do new payable square bracket. That's okay. That new is regarding what? Array. Okay, it's regarding array. So that's completely different story. Okay, you can never do that. So that's our second quiz question. Okay, so in your chat, you answer. Can we use interface to create objects? So you just write the answer as you can. So cannot use interface to create objects. Can you please write to the chat? We cannot use interface to create objects. Yeah. So we cannot. Okay, we cannot. Okay, then next, let's see. Okay. Next, let's see. So here, then the first array element is the invoice. Is it? So you see, for invoice, you can do new. Is it? The second is also invoice. And the third is what? It's a salary employee. is it? And here we do this, refers to the package name. Okay, that's the package name. And we also create 2 salary employee objects, is it? And then what? Then let's see. So the next part, what we did, is we loop, is it? And the loop variable type is what? Is the interface. You see how neat it is it? And this payable object is what? It's an array of payable. Is it? So this is doable. Okay, this is for each loop. Then within it, you do print, you do output, is it? And then you invoke payables to string, is it? And also payables get amount, is it? And if you think it hard, does the payable ever has the payable interface? This interface, does it have 2 string? It doesn't, is it? It doesn't have that method, is it? But you can do it. Why here? Because that's because invoice and the salary employee, they have the 2 string, is it? And here, the payable get payment amount. So here, whose payment amount? Whose it this get payment amount it belong? So who does the payment get amount belong to? This get payment amount belong to, so here I have the multiple choice. Payable, invoice, employee, and salary employee. So the answer is so A, B, C, D. So the get payment amount belongs to who? A, is A correct?
No, I think it's to all of the current objects, which will be.
Yeah. So it belongs to invoice and salary employee. And it belongs to this, okay, B and D, is it? Yeah, so that's.
I've got a question. So we cannot create objects using interface, right?
Yeah, you cannot.
But we can loop objects of interface? Or?
Yeah, that's because over here. That's because over here, this payable objects, the type, the variable type, you said it's some interface. Is it? Okay, but.
So you mean we can create an array, but we cannot create object?
You cannot use it to create object. Exactly.
But we can create an array.
Yeah, but you are still allowed to do this. Okay. Not just array. You can still do this. Payable P equals new invoice something. This is fine. Okay, so what this, yeah, what this means, this is a stack. This is a P. And over here, you have that invoice object. And P point to the object. It's just a reference to. So this is a reference. Okay. Everything is on this guy, on this box. Okay, so the get payment amount, that get payment amount is on this guy. Is it? The .to string is also on this guy. You can call P dot. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so because P basically point to here. That makes sense? Let's clear your doubts. And then over here, it also shows polymorphism. is it? Because get payment amount is a general name, is it? But regarding that invoice objects, it individualizes its get payment amount, is it? For the salary employee object, get individualize its get payment amount, is it? So that's why here we said it's polymorphism, is it? And so here just shows how do you access interface constant. So if you want to access interface constant, you need to explicitly provide interface name, then dot that constant. Okay. And what next try to show is still loop through that array, is it? Then it also calls the display amount method, is it? Display amount. And if it is invoice, it what? It also call the get invoice, is it? This get invoice is what? It's a whose? It's a payable. It's a payable. Is it? It didn't use the current payable. Okay, it used interface name. Is it? So this is to call that static method. Okay, static method. And the display amount. Is it? Display amount is calling what? Call that default method. Is it called that default? The default method. Let's go back. It may be confusing. Is it? So if you take a look, the display amount, it call what? Call get payment amount. Get payment amount is what? Is an abstract method. Is it so? But this is default method. Is it? This is default method. So over here, is it? You call the display amount. Is it? You call the default method. Is it? With this objects. Is it? So it looks like this also belongs to this object. Is it? It is, because it's a default method. Okay, default. But with static method, be careful. You need to use interface name. Okay, so then this display amount will call what? We'll call that get payment amount. Is it? That belongs to who? Belong to each of the box on heap. Is it? On heap. Okay, so be careful here. The get invoice has nothing to do with this. Okay, because what? Because it's interface. Okay, so that's the general idea about interface. So basically, we finish today's